I have just had the absolute honor to have Dr. Ruby Gibson on my most recent podcast, or in trauma, that you can find on, the usual providers, Apple, Spotify, that kind of thing. And Ruby Gibson is a wonderful trainer, educator, and researcher who's done amazing work with the Native American population. And she talks about somatic archaeology, the way our body holds the wisdom, the depth of wisdom, not just for our own lives, but generationally, going right back. We're carrying so much information within us from generations past. And when we heal this, we're also healing generations going forwards. So as you listen to generational brainspotting, somatic archaeology, and a beautiful, wonderfully rich, informed and spiritual approach of Dr. Ruby Gibson, you'll see why her work is so exceptional.
We bring somatic archaeology, which is the technique I developed, with Brainspotting, David Grant's work, and that's what makes generational brainspotting. And so the 5 steps of somatic archaeology are: I notice, I sense, I feel, I interpret, I reconcile. And so we walk through each of those steps because they have a neurophysiological natural flow that way. So we're really just following the body. It's not about having a conversation with what's happening upstairs, because we don't want to bypass the sensing and feeling are really the transformative parts of it. And we can't just say, I notice and I interpret, right? We have to notice, sense, and feel. Then we can interpret, because we're getting the information from our body before we access our minds. It's a very kind of organic process. It happens really natural, and it's kind of like Brainspotting and other Brainspotting techniques will serve anything, like anything that you have going on. If it's a spiritual issue, emotional, relational, traumatic, it will help to bring forward maybe some of the things you've been holding on to, or a person has been holding on to, that defines them in some way. And as they break through that, through their own awareness, by pulling up the roots of that, we're doing kind of an internal excavation. And anytime you excavate something, you have to go slow, right? You have to go carefully, because you might miss some little treasure in the dirt, so to speak. So we can take our time, go very slow with generational brainspotting, because it can bring up a whole collage of unexpected memories and experiences that are holding us and defining us. And it's really a kind of soul work, right? Because you're being corrective with yourself. And and that's just so empowering for anyone.
It sounds beautifully empowering, and the word excavation brings up so many images in my mind, some of which are exploratory and adventurous, others of which, as you were attending to there, could be very aggressive, I suppose, and damaging and scary. Excavation in itself can have many meanings, can't it? And I'm just wondering if that ties in with this sense, because it sounds like a very natural process to be working through these generational wounds, issues, resources, whatever we might find on that excavation. But do you have a sense of, what's your position on if kind of these things are being held and carried forth generationally? And there's so much kind of a natural process within this. Why these things aren't kind of resolving themselves as they come up generationally, you know, any sense about why we need to be doing this kind of focus work, like this beautiful work you've kind of developed, rather than a kind of natural and spontaneous recovery through time?
Well, I've been doing this work for, well, I guess on maybe coming up on 40 years. And I have excavated myself thoroughly, leaving no stone unturned. I've been very focused with myself. I wanted to make sure it worked, huh? So you use yourself as your best client, and I practiced and practiced, and I kept finding that people had the same response, irregardless of the origin of a trauma or an experience. They had the same, you know, type of response. And so we start with resourcing. Resource, because the more you can resource, the deeper that memory can come forward. It's like, just like anything, you know, what's on the surface is the most recent. But what's buried underneath that, what you're excavating, are some of those things that maybe your family didn't talk about, but are knowledge, or, you know, some people have really clear family lineage and history. Some people have been adopted or have lost their homelands or their people. You know, there's a lot of different situations, but I believe inside of every human being that they have the ability to cure themselves in that way. And once we teach them the techniques, they can use them on their own, you know, doing self-spotting or gaze spotting, you know. It's, people come out of the generational brain spotting class going, oh, you know, because their mind is a little blown and they have really deep personal experiences. But it helps us to understand who we are, why we do what we do.
Just the way you were talking about borders earlier, and there was geographical borders, medicinal borders. I'm hearing about spiritual borders, perhaps even neurobiological borders, generational borders. But you don't let the borders lock you in. You seem to transcend. You're very transcendental in terms of, you move beyond borders if they're restricting you to a higher self. And I just love the way you went to New York and came back with massive funding. You wrote a book and then got given, not given, you earned yourself a master's without having to do anything further. You mean, it's just phenomenal the work you're doing. And I even love the borders where you're saying this isn't necessary traditionally in brain spotting. This is, yeah, it's all healing, isn't it? What are the borders there? You know, the healing is what matters. And it just feels like you're so attuned to yourself now and the people working with you that's your guide. You know, there aren't really predetermined borders that are going to show you what you need to be doing as a population there.
Not many limitations here. But, you know, I'm a sacred woman in a lot of ways, and I pray, and, you know, I carry my medicine really good. And so when you know, when we come, like somatic archaeology is the baseline, like the foundation of everything we do, and it's taught in this training here. But brain spotting, Chris, you know, Chris Rank.
Yeah,
she comes in and does our brain spotting phase 1 for the students, and then I do generational brain spotting, so they get that on top of this 200-hour training, you know. So it's yeah, we've got a lot more brain spotters in our indigenous communities now.
when we're talking about doing doing this generational brain spotting or somatic archaeology, and you're talking about kind of like the body's a library, so we're not having to know exactly what to work on, our history, what happened with great grandparents all this time ago. So just to simplify it for us as listeners, and what might be an access point to do a piece of work like this?
Okay, I can give you a couple. So let's look at it through this lens. When my mother was in her mother's womb, my mother was born with all the eggs she'll ever have, right? A woman has, well, men produce sperm every day, but a woman has a set of eggs as when she's born. And so I was incubated in my grandmother's womb, in my mother's womb. So when my mother was born, I was already there, right? In her womb, a little egg waiting. So probably our maternal grandmother has the strongest epigenetic and biological relationship with us. And that's always a good place to start. So I would advise students who are planning to attend to do a little research around their maternal grandmother or their maternal grandfather. And excuse me. Excuse me. The other thing that you can do is you can brain spot the navel. That's a very good place to draw memory from. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people have unresolved dynamics within their family system currently. That's the best place to start too, is just kind of start sitting with it and feeling feeling the trail. Where does that come from? Where are the roots of that? And
that sounds nice, and something that's quite graspable, isn't it, to understand the current discord in the family and just to feel into that and embody that. And then in Brainspotting, once you set the frame, you use an eye position to really travel and explore in terms of whatever comes up for you somatically in the body, right?
Yeah, exactly.